You're watching Room 57, where we dissect the darkest crimes with surgical precision and chilling detail. Today, get ready for a story that reads like fiction, but every moment is real. A successful doctor, the devoted wife, a big, happy family in the quiet suburbs of Utah, until the wife is found drowned in a bathtub, and the perfect husband, the perfect father, brings home a nanny just weeks later. No one questioned anything until the oldest daughter uncovered what the police had missed. Chapter 1. The McNeel family, a flawless mask, a picture-perfect life. Find 2007. In the small town of Pleasant Grove, Utah, the McNeel family looked like the American dream. Martin McNeel, doctor, hospital director, lawyer, was the very definition of success. He and his wife Michele had 8 children. For biological, for adopted. Michele was everything. Martin was not soft-spoken, gentle, deeply religious. A stay-at-home mom who devoted her life to raising the children. She cooked, homeschooled, managed every detail of their lives. To neighbors and church friends, they were ideal. No drama, no rumors, nothing to raise a single eyebrow. But behind closed doors, the cracks had already begun to form. Martin, the man of many masks, what most didn't know was Martin's past and his patterns. He had a documented history of mental illness, including hospitalizations for bipolar disorder, was controlling of Michele from what she wore to how she looked. And he was obsessed with appearances, both public and private. According to their oldest daughter, Alexis, Martin had pressured Michele into getting a full cosmetic makeover for her birthday, something she didn't really want. Michele, the woman who disappeared behind the curtain, was the traditional Mormon wife, devout, humble, self-sacrificing. She had once dreamed of becoming a lawyer, but gave it up to raise a family. She had a deep sense of duty, and even adopted children from Ukraine. She rarely argued, rarely questioned, rarely said no. But she had started noticing the coldness in Martin. He was traveling more, talking less, hiding things. Still, she chose to believe the best until Martin suggested a gift that would change everything. A facelift, the surgery that changed everything. In April 3, 2007, Michele underwent cosmetic surgery. She returned home to recover under the care of Martin himself. But Alexis, who was in medical school at the time, quickly noticed red flags. Martin had filled her mother's prescriptions with dangerously strong sedatives, oxycodone, Valium, promethazine. He insisted the kids go back to school and stop hovering, and his demeanor, far from concerned, was strangely calm, even calculated. April 11th, the bath of death. Just 8 days after the surgery, Martin called 911. I came home and found my wife drowned in the bathtub. By the time emergency services arrived, Michele was already blue, no pulse. The official report said accidental drowning, complications from surgery and medications. Martin cried. The funeral was arranged quickly. Friends offered sympathy, but Alexis didn't buy it, not for a second. The details that didn't add up. Did Martin push so many sedatives on her mom against recovery guidelines? Why was he suddenly redecorating the bathroom where she died? And who was the mysterious young woman suddenly helping around the house? A woman introduced as the new nanny, but one who dressed provocatively, lingered late into the night, and acted more like the new wife than a caregiver. Her name was Gypsy Willis, and she would unlock everything. Chapter 2. Gypsy Willis, the perfect nanny, or the perfect replacement. The scent of perfume, and a stranger in the house less than a month after Michele MacNeill's sudden death, something began to shift in the family home. It wasn't just the silence of grief or the absence of a mother. There was perfume, strong, unfamiliar. There were unfamiliar clothes in the laundry, and there was a woman new, alluring, and suddenly everywhere. Her name was Gypsy Willis. Martin introduced her as the new nanny, a helper who would assist with cooking, housework, and watching over the younger children. But something felt off. The children weren't toddlers, they were school-age. Gypsy didn't dress like a nanny. She wore tight clothes, revealing tops, heavy makeup. And most telling of all, she was staying overnight. Frequently, Alexis, the daughter who refused to forget. Alexis wasn't just the eldest daughter. She was also a medical student, sharp, observant, and fiercely protective of her mother's memory. From the moment Michele died, something had felt wrong. Now, watching her father move on with eerie speed and watching this strange woman settle into their home, Alexis's instincts turned to conviction. She began asking questions. Why had her father insisted on giving her mother such a cocktail of sedatives post-surgery? Why was he so quick to dismiss Michele's death as an unfortunate accident? And who exactly was this woman named Gypsy? Alexis started digging. What she uncovered would shake the case wide open. A hidden affair, and a long paper trail. As Alexis combed through her father's emails and records, she discovered something that confirmed her worst fears. Martin had been having an affair with Gypsy Willis long before her mother died. There were emails between them dating back over a year. Some were sexual, some included photos, and some discussed living together after Michele was gone. But it didn't stop there. Gypsy wasn't just a lover. She had a criminal record for identity theft and computer fraud. In fact, she and Martin had allegedly attempted to steal the identity of one of his adopted daughters to help Gypsy escape debt and legal issues. Stolen identities and suspicious accounts Alexis found. Bank transactions that didn't make sense anew. Credit accounts opened under names of the adopted children of males discussing how to merge Gypsy into the household. Martin had even gone so far as to move Gypsy into the family home under false pretenses, help her obtain fraudulent ID, using the name of one of his children change his wife's death certificate documents behind the scenes. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a calculated replacement, a quiet erasure. From daughter to investigator, Alexis turned everything over to the police, but their initial response was lukewarm. No physical signs of violence, no forced entry, no bruises on Michelle's body. It was accidental drowning. End of story. But Alexis didn't stop. She reached out to reporters. She called prosecutors. She even pushed for a second autopsy. And finally, the tide began to shift. A second autopsy and new question. McNeel family demanded an independent autopsy. The results came back with chilling detail. While there were still no external injuries, the toxicology report showed dangerously high levels of prescription sedatives in Michelle's system. Individually, they weren't lethal, but in combination, especially in a hot bathtub, they could easily cause disorientation, loss of consciousness, and drowning. To the medical examiner, it was now clear Michelle's death was not natural. It was induced. The police reopened the case with the new findings. Police reopened the investigation. They interviewed neighbors, friends, even Martin's co-workers. Everyone described him the same way: charming, intelligent, cold, calculating, obsessively concerned with appearance. Even recalled how Martin seemed strangely relieved after Michelle died, smiling, upbeat, as if a burden had been lifted. The children turned against their father as more evidence came out. The McNeel children made a collective decision. They would stand against the man who had raised them. They believed he had murdered their mother. Even the younger kids, who had been initially shielded from the drama, began to see through Martin's behavior and the lies that held their family together. For Gypsy, the fairy tale was unraveling. For Martin, the mask was falling. Chapter 3, The Trial of the Doctor. When masks fall off, the case is reopened, but building it won't be easy. In 2010, 3 years after Michele MacNeill's death, the case was officially reopened. Thanks to relentless pressure from Alexis and her siblings, along with newly examined toxicology reports, Utah County prosecutors decided they had enough to begin building a criminal case. But there was a problem. There was no definitive smoking gun, no eyewitnesses, no confessions, no visible wounds, just a mix of sedatives in a body, a rapid replacement in the household, and a husband with a motive. The prosecution needed more. The breakthrough inmate confessions. Then came the unexpected twist. To former inmates who had served time with Martin McNeel came forward independently, claiming he had confessed to them while in jail on fraud charges. These men, both serving unrelated sentences, described similar conversations. Martin had bragged about giving his wife pills. Said he made it look like a surgery complication. One inmate quoted him saying, "I gave her the pills, made her go in the tub, and she died just like I planned." While jailhouse informants are often viewed with skepticism, the similarity in their stories combined with other circumstantial evidence was enough. The district attorney approved homicide charges. 2013, the trial begins in November. 2013, Martin McNeel stood trial for the first-degree murder of his wife, Michelle. The courtroom was packed with reporters, former patient church members, and Martin's own children sitting on the side of the prosecution. Man who once looked like a model father was now on trial for murdering his wife so he could move in with his mistress. The evidence present at prosecutors laid out a chilling picture. Timeline, emails, and phone records show Martin and Gypsy were in close contact. Even during Michelle's surgery, recovered toxicology expert testimony confirmed the drug mix in Michelle's system was not typical and dangerously sedative. A financial motive. Michelle had recently discovered Martin's affair and financial frauds, including identity theft. Gypsy's testimony. Gypsy Willis admitted to the affair, but claimed ignorance about any murder plot. Most emotional testimony came from the children. Alexis described her mother's final days. Another daughter testified to seeing Martin dump Michelle's medications down the toilet right after her death. A strange move if he truly believed she died accidentally. The defense strategy: deny. Dana Martin's lawyers painted a different picture. Michelle was depressed, anxious, and took the medications herself. Bathtub was slippery. It was an accident. Prison informants were unreliable and seeking reduced sentence. They argued that while Martin may have been an adulterer and a fraudster, that didn't make him a murderer. But the jury wasn't convinced. The verdict: guilty. After 11 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty. Martin McNeel was convicted of First-degree murder obstruction of justice. Sentence, life in prison, with the possibility of parole only after serving 17 years. The courtroom was silent, then gasps, then tears. Alexis wept. Gypsy stared blankly. Martin. He showed no emotion. The aftermath. Suicide in prison in April 2017. Just 4 years into his sentence, Martin McNeel was found dead in his prison cell. He had taken his own life by hanging. He left no note, no final statement. Just silence, the same silence that followed Michelle's death, now echoing through prison bars. The family left behind. McNeel children have since spoken publicly about the trauma and the healing. Alexis became a doctor, like she promised her mother she would. The siblings remain close, bonded by tragedy and justice. In interviews, they described their journey as a fight for truth in a world built on lies. And Gypsy, she was convicted on identity theft charges and served time in federal prison. After her release, she disappeared from the public eye. Final reflections, a crime of ego, not passion. Martin McNeel didn't kill out of rage. He didn't act in a sudden moment of madness. He planned, he manipulated, he executed. All to preserve his image, to replace his wife, and to protect his lies. This wasn't just the murder of a woman. It was the dismantling of a family by a man who wore perfection like a costume. Chapter 4. The mind behind the mask. Who was Martin McNeel, really? A perfect man or a perfect manipulator? To the outside world, Martin McNeel was the kind of man others admired. A medical doctor, a lawyer, a father of 8, a man of faith and influence in his Mormon community. But behind the polished smile was a master manipulator. His story raises a chilling question. Can someone wear the mask of goodness so well they fool even those who love them most? The psychology of narcissistic control experts who follow the case suggest that Martin McNeel displayed traits common to narcissistic sociopathy: grandiosity. He viewed himself as smarter, more capable, and more deserving than those around him. Manipulativeness. He controlled Michelle's surgery, her medications, and even the narrative after her death. Lack of empathy. He moved at his mistress just days after Michelle's funeral, with no regard for his grieving children. Pathological. Lying. From medical fraud to family secrets. Deceit was Martin's second language. This wasn't simply about cheating or escaping a marriage. This was about power. About control. About winning, even if it meant someone had to die. The system that enabled him Martin's success was not accidental. He knew how to play systems. As a doctor, he used his knowledge to obtain and manipulate dangerous prescriptions. As a lawyer, he understood legal blind spots and exploited them to delay investigations. As a respected church member, he leveraged community trust to deflect suspicion. And perhaps most dangerously, he understood image. In a world obsessed with success, Martin built his identity around appearing perfect. But when someone builds their life around appearances, they'll do anything to keep the mask on. Red flags that no one caught looking back. There were warning signs. His push for Michelle's unnecessary plastic surgery. His quickness to medicate her with multiple sedatives. His hasty move to install Gypsy in the home. His financial schemes and identity theft. Yet each red flag was dismissed. Because Martin wore a white coat. Because he was educated, respected, nice. That's what makes the McNeel case so terrifying. Sometimes evil doesn't come with a gun or a knife. Sometimes it comes wearing a suit, carrying a stethoscope, and calling you dear. The resilience of the children amid the horror. One part of the story stands out as profoundly human. The children, they chose to believe what they saw, not what they were told. They faced public scrutiny, media attention, and emotional chaos, but they stood firm. Alexis became a doctor and an advocate for domestic violence awareness. Her siblings testified in court, reliving trauma to fight for justice. They protected each other and rebuilt their family from the ashes. Higher courage reminds us that even in the face of profound betrayal, truth can rise. Lessons from the case. For all of us, Martin McNeel case isn't just about one murderer. It's about how society confuses success with goodness, how trust can be weaponized by those who understand it too well, how systems from medicine to law to religion can be gammed. It's also a call to be vigilant, to listen to your good or question perfection, to take emotional manipulation serious. Libicus. Sometimes the people who seem too good to be true are, to the viewer, what will you see now? If this story disturbed you, it should. If it made you uncomfortable, it's working. Because the purpose of Room 57 isn't just a shock, it's to open your eyes. We live in a world where predators don't always look like villains. Where abusers can hide behind charm, and where justice only comes when someone refuses to stay silent. So here's the final question. What will you choose to see next time the mask smiles at you? Final chapter. Behind closed doors. What the McNeel case taught you is this was never just about a murder story. Of Martin McNeel is not just a tale of a man who killed his wife. It's a story about masks. About how charm can be a weapon. About how systems meant to protect medicine, law, family can be used to destroy. and about how truth often hides not in the headlines, but in the quiet persistence of those who refuse to forget. A final glimpse into the mind Martin didn't need to raise his voice to be dangerous. He didn't need to leave a bruise to commit violence. He used authority s'appare to commit a crime that was nearly perfect, but perfection cracks. And when it did, it was his own children who exposed the truth. From Room 57 to you. Let this case stay with you. If you watched this far, you're not just a viewer. You're someone who refuses to look away. So before we end, we ask, have you ever ignored a red flag because someone seemed nice? Have you ever trusted too quickly because someone had the right title or the right look? Have you ever silenced your instincts to avoid making things awkward? The McNeel case reminds us those instincts might save a life. Call to action, not just for clicks, but for change. If this video made you think, share it. Not because it's trendy, but because it's true. If you have questions, doubts, or reflections, leave a comment. We don't just read them, we build future episodes from them. And if you believe stories like this deserve the depth, the research, and the clarity Room 57 brings, subscribe. Not for content, for context. Not for drama, for detail. Coming next on Room 57, our next case will take us from Utah to the deep woods of Oregon, where a pastor disappears, and his diary leads investigators into a secret world of exorcisms, delusion, and power. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for watching. This has been Room 57. Where the darkest truths are not just told, they're examined. We'll see you in the next episode.